This show is brought to you by Boricua Beer, coming to your local retailer in September. This show has been brought to you by Taino Light Beer, coming to your favorite retailer in September in Central Florida.
Are you proud to be Hispanic?
Hispanics in Florida now have the first Hispanic car license plate in the United States.
Be a proud Hispanic.
Put the Hispanic plate on your car.
I want to be a doctor.
I want to be a scientist.
I want to be an engineer.
I want to be a police officer.
I want to be a professional dancer.
By getting the Hispanic plate for your car,
you will support scholarships and community programs.
Call now or visit HispanicAchievers.org.
I am for the child who's had 7 addresses in a single year because she's in foster care, because her father abused her, and her mother couldn't believe her. She is the child I am for. I am a volunteer child advocate. I am you.
Florida residents call toll-free 866-341-1425.
Hi, I'm Danny Ramos, and welcome to this week's edition of Hispanic Speak Out TV, brought to you on Bright House Cable for the past 14 years. We talk about the Hispanic community and issues that affect the community at large. I'm here with my co-host, Jose Miranda, and our guest today is Senator Darren Soto, who's going to be talking about what happened in Tallahassee in the last session. Welcome, Senator.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Welcome back.
Okay, give us the lowdown on what happened in the let's start with education.
Sure. Well, it was a fairly good budget for education in that we had the highest total amount spent on education, but we're still not at the 2007 levels per student. I know, Jose, you've always been concerned about school supplies and things like that. Mm-hmm. A lot of those decisions will be made on the local level, but they'll be getting more money than they did last year. The only problem was that since we did not expand Medicaid and the federal government, as they said they would all along, started lowering our low-income pool funding, we had to spend $400 million more than we initially wanted to on healthcare, which was the main reason why we were unable to get to the record level per student that many of us had been pushing for all session.
So had they accepted the money from the federal government, we wouldn't have that situation.
Right. I believe that we would have, with that $400 million, been able to get to a record per student spending, which would be almost $8,000 by the end of it all.
So forgive me. How can we continue to be so asinine on monies that is quite obvious that we need in order to get other projects done?
Well, first I prefer to say they, since I voted to expand Medicaid and for the fixed program.
I wasn't, particularly singling you out.
Just transitioning to the healthcare issue, the Senate put forward a bipartisan plan that would have drawn down the nearly $5 billion to provide healthcare to the people who are in the gap, people who make 133% or more above poverty level can go get healthcare on the exchanges. People at 100% and below have Medicaid already. Right. But this gap of almost 900,000 Floridians who don't qualify for either of them, we would draw down the money to give them health care. The difference being that they would have gotten the money to buy private plans. We would not have expanded Medicaid. We passed that with only 2 no votes, sent it over to the House. They had a vote, but only 40-something of them actually voted in favor of it. And so if you really want to know where the blame lays, it lays with the House members that voted against it and with Governor Scott, who
Republicans and the governor.
Mostly Republicans and the governor. Well, all the Republicans besides a few who voted for it in the House. About 3 or 4 of them voted for it in the House.
What do we do to overcome this stuff? Because we know education is important. We know the healthcare issue is important. Okay, and we're not even touching stuff like pensions and job security or creating new jobs. So throw the ball in.
Well, the issue is always voting. We had robust turnout in 2012, and we had a lot of people voice their concerns and their votes in 2012 by electing a more evenly distributed government. And then in 2014, a lot of people didn't show up. And so that led to a lot of folks who supported Medicaid expansion to lose, and also put in a bunch of new Republican House members who were against it. They ran on that. They were voted in based upon that platform. And so this can also be filed in the file folder of elections have consequences. And unfortunately, that's the reason why. But what can we do to change it? We could vote, everybody, which I know a lot of folks out here who are watching this program are avid voters, but your family members, your neighbors, co-workers, folks you know at your synagogue or your church or wherever you worship, these are folks that need to also vote in order to make these decisions.
The Republicans seem to be very transfixed on voter IDs and stuff like that, and to the extent or the extreme that they're going to nullify legit voters that have been voting all their lives. What are we doing here in Florida for that?
Well, that we had a lot of success on, because right before the 2014 election, in 2013 going into 2014, the Scott administration put out this list of over 200,000 voters they thought were validated, including on that list decorated veterans of World War II and a host of other individuals that had every right to vote. One of the major flaws of that purge list, as it was referred to, was that it did not use a federal database that was updated for naturalized citizens, for those who and so that's why there are so many Hispanics on there, because we have a lot of us who come in and they become citizens. They choose to come to this country and get citizenship. And so ultimately, with the help of the Obama administration, we were able to see that list was not used, and so there wasn't a lot of votes invalidated. Now, the big election news from this year was that we finally got online registration passed. But the politics of it was that we wanted to pass it for before the 2016 election, since the majority of states have online registration. Governor Scott then said, well, we're not ready, wait till after the 2016 election. So we took him at his word and put it for 2017. Then uninvited, his Secretary of State came in and just opposed it without testifying, without being invited. And so that led to a huge blow up and demanding that he come on stage.
When someone can come in and do that, exactly what you did.
Well,
uninvited.
Well, uninvited as in usually these secretaries, they call in advance, they get time right up front, we know they're coming. They're still allowed to testify. So uninvited doesn't mean you're not allowed to testify. Any citizen's allowed to testify. But it means that you're doing it in a shady manner. If you're a secretary, you're generally going to call us, let us know, have you come up, maybe you may even educate us in advance so that we can fully get what point you have. So when you stand up uninvited, or unannounced rather is probably a better way of saying it, and then just say you're against something without giving a rational why, a lot of senators took offense, because the governor's prior position was that we were okay with it as long as we had enough time to implement it. Now, of course, his own state senator, Garrett Richter, was one of the co-sponsors of the bill, Rick Scott's own state senator. So he took offense to it, and a lot of others did. And so what ultimately happened is that the bill passed and the governor reluctantly signed it into law. What people speculated is the governor's already potentially looking at a 2018 U.S. Senate race. Only a year, not even a year for him. Not only a year, not even a year into his term, and so he was concerned about making it any easier to register could potentially
What did the law feature?
The law just simply said you can register online, not vote online, just register online. Right now, we do all sorts of stuff online that affect Social Security, that affect Medicare, that affect, we do our banking online. I mean, let's face it, it's the 21st century. We have the internet, we use it. And so all this would do is allow for registration online, but that would make it easier. And it doesn't really make sense when you could already do it when you get your license, you get that. When you sign up for civil service, you get a voter registration form. So it just really makes sense at this point.
Do they still have to check ID and stuff when they go in if you register online? In other words, they look them up, and do they ask for a driver's license?
You have to have certain existing state IDs before you could qualify to register online. You couldn't just register as Mickey Mouse online and get your get your ballot and all that.
Okay.
So you have to have some documents already that you can reference in there. So there is a quality control, and so this is the same system used by the majority of the other states, and all the others
so
are going
we
our
can
way.
use that as a voter registration drives, right? We can cut down on some of them because we can do it online as well.
Right, and every supervisor of elections was in support of it because it saved them money, because online registration is cheaper, and so you can have. You need to use less money on that. But yes, it would be a way to even enhance registration through a Facebook or Twitter or other online
Let me be a devil's advocate
campaign.
with that. What happens if somebody, with the flick of a finger, goes, oops, and erases all that stuff?
Well, there's always a concern about data security, and part of the appropriation was to make sure that the supervisors were going to be able to handle that.
Right.
I will tell you already that they all said that they could handle it. So we had all 67 supervisors of elections support it and say they'll be ready by the time of the deadline. So we go by what the testimony is and what the evidence is presented. And the evidence presented suggested that it was going to be a secure system by the time it would be implemented, and it was unanimously supported.
So do you feel comfortable that this whole voter registration debate is over with this system?
I think so.
Because people have been, complaining they don't have access. They're being, discriminated against when it comes to registration. No photo ID. Is this a solution that everybody's happy with?
There'll always be issues of voting because voting always evolves, and there's still concerns about how there's too much discretion with the supervisor of elections as far as the hours and number of days you could have early voting. Right now, you have the discretion to go up to 2 weeks and up to 12 hours a day. But since it's in the discretion, you have, for instance, a supervisor in Duval County who said some really concerning statements to me in a majority-minority county with a huge, historically discriminated against African-American population.
Right.
He only wanted it eight hours a day for 1 week. While you have another county like Orange or Broward that has it 12 hours a day, 2 weeks in a row, and so that means greater access, especially if you're working 9 to 5.
Is the 8 hours a day a political strategy? That's a political strategy to prevent minorities from voting?
The 8
In other
hour,
words, is that being used as a?
Originally, when they and still, because there's discretion about the souls of the polls Sunday, one could argue that, and a lot of us believe that to be true. The argument that some of the supervisors will say is that they can't afford it, or they need time to prepare for the election on election day. But I think the key is voting is a fundamental right, and if you have someone who can't go during a work day because the voting's from 9 to 5, and someone else in another county can go, that makes a big difference, especially in a huge working class community here in Orange and Osceola County, where many Hispanics, we have 2 to 3 jobs and may have children and 2-income families. And so if we were in Duval County, that would substantially affect us if it wasn't a 12-hour day, because who's going to be able to get off from their 9 to 5 job to go in if that's when the early voting is? So the key is, if there is a difference in access between one county and another, I believe that's an equal protection issue, and that's an issue that still needs to be resolved.
Do you think there'll be lawsuits involved with that?
I think there'll always be lawsuits. Whether they'll prevail or not will be another question.
Okay. All right, Darren, we're going to take a break, and we will be right back in a minute. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
this is Danny Ramos on Hispanic Speak Out. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Lisa Pino. I'm a Latina role model. I am a student at the University of Central Florida, graduating with her communication degree in December. My advice to students is to stay focused, stay dedicated, and don't let challenges bring you down.
It is not about the goal, it is about the road. Remember to keep dreaming, live genuinely, and never stop dreaming. Pursue your dreams, but enjoy the moment.
Are you proud to be Hispanic?
Hispanics in Florida now have the first Hispanic car license plate in the United States.
Be a proud Hispanic.
Put the Hispanic plate on your car.
I want to be a doctor.
I want to be a scientist.
I want to be an engineer.
I want to be a police officer.
I want to be a professional dancer.
By getting the Hispanic plate for your car,
you will support scholarships and community programs.
Call now or visit HispanicAchievers.org.
Hey, this is Danny Ramos. Welcome back to Hispanic Speak Out, and we're going to continue our conversation with Darren Soto. And we're going to pick up on some of the questions that we didn't get answered on the budget. Right. And we were talking about Valencia, we were talking about UCF, Downtown Medical. Okay, so let's start off with Valencia.
Well, first, there was a record $460 million in vetoes. And it had a lot to do with the governor being very angry at the Senate for us standing up for health care and to expand Medicaid. And so he vetoed a whole host of projects in Central Florida, including $15 million to start the UCF downtown university, including $10 million for the Performing Arts Center, the Dr. Phillips Performing Arts Center, monies for Orlando Repertory Theater, among other issues. In Osceola, in our district, we were 1 for 2, so it wasn't all bad. But our big jobs project got vetoed, and we're trying to develop an advanced sensor manufacturing center to bring more high-paying jobs to Osceola. UCF's already kicked in money. Osceola's kicked in $60 million over the next couple of years, and we had $10 million in the budget to help buy, as you can appreciate, very complex equipment to develop the most advanced sensors in the world. And that item was vetoed, so it was kind of ironic that the jobs governor vetoed a key jobs project. But
which he's supposed to be behind creating jobs.
Yeah, and that's the big concern. We know that we have a robust tourism and agriculture industry in Osceola, but what we lack is high-paying jobs in other sectors, and even in those sectors, the jobs aren't that high-paying in most cases. So that's the big issue, and we're trying to develop Medical City. The money for Sanford Burnham got vetoed too. But the one good thing that we did get through was half the money for construction of the Point Siena Valencia campus. And that's key. Point Siena is a heavily Hispanic community. I have cousins down there who are right now going to high school at Liberty. And what I could tell you is there's a 20% drop-off between the kids going on to college from high schools in Point Siena and in South Osceola versus North Osceola. And so it should be constructed over the next 3 years, and it should lift up the college attendance rate in Osceola.
But you only got a quarter of that money, or half that money. Where's the rest of the money coming from?
Well, you pay for these things over the course of 2-3 years. We had $1 million for design last year. We had $11.9 million this year, and we'll be asking for another $11.9 next year. And it is likely, with the fact that we got half the construction money this year, we generally don't start projects and then not fund them at all. Now, there could be a chance of delays if we got less than that, and then it would expand out the construction time, but we don't half-build universities around here and colleges. So I feel good about bringing this thing in for a landing, but yes, there's a question about whether it'll be 2 years or 3 years till it's done.
Well, that would be cost overrun if it went an extra year to build. That's more money.
It would be probably a little more money. So
then you're coming back for not 11, but you'd be coming back for 22.
Well, not for 22, but hopefully we won't have any vetoes next year, and with the Senate firmly in support of the project, with everybody knowing the issues I just explained to you. And we're talking about a working class commuter community where it takes over an hour to drive from Point Siena to the East Osceola campus, and over 2 hours to take the bus each way. So it really is an issue, even though it's not that far from East Osceola, just by virtue of the traffic and the limited access out of there. That's a big issue.
If there was one main project that you feel that needed to be addressed, what would that be?
I would say slightly more leaning towards the Valencia Point Siena campus, because I still believe, even with or without economic development projects, educated people can help drive our economy. So education is first in my mind, but having the money to help fast track this manufacturing center would have gone a long way to, in the long run, creating the type of jobs that we now have in Far East Orlando in Corporate Park with simulation, that we're developing biotech in Medical City, and that we have a huge reemergence of in space jobs out in Brevard County. Those are, for simulation alone, 80,000 people work in some company related to simulation. It's one of the very guarded secrets, because it's all secret military stuff. But all those jobs, 50,000 or above. And when you have more people making that kind of money, it trickles down to the people who are sole proprietors of a pizza place or a Hispanic restaurant or a clothing store, things like that.
Well,
so
at least you would hope that. Well, speaking about minorities and things, right?
Yes.
We have an issue with the island of Puerto Rico.
Right.
Well, and actually two issues, okay?
Right.
One, they're approaching a point where if they could, they would be in bankruptcy. And the other is citizenship.
Right.
What do you personally feel about citizenship? Should they get it? Are you supportive?
Well, they have it. They're already citizens.
I mean, I'm sorry, to be allowed to vote, I'm sorry.
I believe that they should be citizens according to the Constitution, should have the right to vote for the president. They're already able to be drafted into the military. My father is one of those citizens by statute. He was born in Manatí, Puerto Rico. And so whether it be through whether they decide or not to be a state, or whether it be through a constitutional amendment saying that Americans who live in territory should be citizens constitutionally, not by statute, I'm supportive either way. I still believe, though, the island has to make, those on the island need to make the final decision about statehood or not. I would say as far as the debt crisis, though, the president started outlining what would be a good start to help out Puerto Rico. One is to qualify them to be able to go into bankruptcy and negotiate with all these creditors. Two is if there are federal grants that are already accessible to states, that they should be accessible to Puerto Rico to help them through this crisis in any various number of areas, from agriculture to economic development, anything that could ease their current concerns. And then the third thing is to provide them with some institutional knowledge to navigate. This is going to be a very difficult road they're going to have to travel through bankruptcy. But what I would not support is a bailout. I think that we need to do it through the bankruptcy court and not put taxpayers on the hook for billions of dollars.
How does that affect all the civil service workers when you go into a bankruptcy? I mean, do they continue to get paid reliably, or what happens?
Generally, it's a reorganization, so the initial needs have to be paid, much like what we saw with GM. But everything will be on the table to negotiate. And
pensions?
Pensions could be, but it's not necessarily the pensions as much as all the bonds and the debt that they have. I mean, they're not saying because they have unfunded liabilities in their pensions is the biggest driving reason of the debt. The biggest driving reason is that they've supplemented their normal spending with bonding for years. And every single administration has used that as a supplement and then kicked the can down the road. And unfortunately, Puerto Ricans on the island have voted for usually someone who's willing to exacerbate that rather than deal with the issue, because it means cuts, it means job losses in the state sector, it means potential pension cuts. But I think it's not all austerity. That's where I think the grants come in, and that's where I think the bankruptcy comes in. There needs to be more of an influx of cash, but according to existing federal grants, like the president had talked about, and there needs to be a reorganization of the debt so that they could cut that debt down. And I think that's the way to do it, rather than just forcing them to pay every last dime. It's not working with Greece, and it's not going to work with Puerto Rico either.
When they go into bankruptcy, how do you think it's going to affect the Puerto Rican communities here? Will there be, do a lot of Puerto Ricans rely on checks coming out of Puerto Rico for retirement and that kind of thing?
Well, I think that it will affect the economy somewhat here in Central Florida. I know, having worked hand in hand with PRAFA here for years, and all my assistants are trained by PRAFA to help work with them on these issues. There are many pensioners here in Central Florida. But I think the bigger effect would be that we're going to see the already robust immigration go into overdrive over the next couple months. But as with GM, people didn't all of a sudden not get their pension checks because of the bankruptcy. But over the long run, there could be a renegotiation of some of those things. That's not my decision. That's a bankruptcy judge's decision. And it's also Puerto Rico's decision whether they want that to be part of the plan or not. They could decide that they don't want that to be part of the plan. So I don't have an opinion on whether or not they should look at the pensions or not. My concern is to have a process, because this region is so connected to Puerto Rico that we have to play an active role. And part of it is because of the initial setup. They don't have a voting congressman. They can't vote for the president. So if we don't help step up for them, who will on the island? They don't have the rights we do.
Puerto Rico is losing a tremendous number of people that are coming to Central Florida. Okay, they're not going to Miami, they're landing up here. I think in the last 2 years, 150,000 Puerto Ricans have moved into Central Florida just in 2 years.
The biggest since the 1940s, I think.
Yeah. And they're going to continue coming. I mean, I have my secretary just came from Puerto Rico. I hired her 4 months ago. She graduated University of Puerto Rico with a 4-year degree, and she couldn't find a job in Puerto Rico. So she came here by herself, and she found a room, and she's living with someone, and I came across her and I hired her. And she's telling me, the story that there are droves of people, thousands and thousands of people are preparing to leave the island just on a continuous basis, coming to Central Florida. So now all of a sudden we're going to have a double population of Puerto Ricans in Central Florida. How is that going to affect the political system here?
Well,
I mean, you like that idea?
It'll mean a lot more voters. We've already had 50% of the growth in Florida from Hispanics for the last 11 years, the 10 years that the census tracked, and just this last year. We already had 50% of the growth in the state approximately from Central Florida. So this has already been happening. It's going to be more, but this whole east side of the 417 corridor, as I like to call it, was built by that immigration. There were cows and orange groves there before. Now there are Puerto Ricans and other Hispanics from many other countries because it is a region that has welcomed them, and it's an area where they can preserve their culture and still speak not only English but Spanish and be able to get around. And so we're already prepared as we're going to be. Florida is a low tax, low services state.
Are there going to be jobs here for all of these people coming?
Well, I believe that that's going to be something that will be not a perfect progression. I think some of them will start businesses and bring their savings over. Some of them will probably try to apply at our many parks, and agriculture is a big employer around here. And just as we talked about before, we're trying to lead to further higher paying jobs. But I think a lot of it will be over the course of years. I don't think a lot of them are going to come right over and have a great job unless they have the money to help create it themselves.
And like you mentioned before, you're going to have Hispanics working multiple jobs.
Right.
4 or 5 members of a family that all have more than one job in order to keep their level high.
Right, and keep in mind that the only 2 real benefits any of them could possibly get in Florida, food stamps, if we're talking about a single mother or a single father with children, that's paid for by not only federal income tax, which they now have to pay if they're making money, but by our sales tax here. So they're already going to be paying into the system if they were to get on that, and that's only for a very limited set of circumstances. And Medicaid also deducted not only in Puerto Rico, but here. So there are no other benefits that are really around there, maybe kid care in our education system, but we know it's going to be tough. No one can sit here and say otherwise, but we have and must welcome them. There are hermanos y hermanas, and
I don't think they're coming no matter what.
For stability.
They're going to come no matter what,
and they have every right to.
And a lot of them are coming with money, with their own money. Like you said, they're going to start up their own businesses, and then they will hire Puerto Ricans, and it'll roll.
And that would be a boon to our economy, because with all this new development and all this migration, there are a bunch of office buildings, strip malls, other things. But I'm hopeful that some of them will bring manufacturing with them. Other things where they create stuff rather than just the run-of-the-mill small business where they don't all the time add to the economy. They just kind of mix in it.
Well, we've run out of time, Senator, and everybody out there get ready. There's hundreds of thousands of Puerto Rican voters coming to Central Florida, and they can't vote in Puerto Rico for president, but they can certainly vote here in Florida for president, which is a topic that we'll be discussing ongoing. Senator, thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
This is Hispanic Speak Out. We will see you next week. This show is brought to you by Boricua Beer, coming to your local retailer in September. This show has been brought to you by Taino Light Beer, coming to your favorite retailer in September in Central Florida.
My name is Raquel Garzon, and I'm a Latina role model. My advice to you is to always be yourself, be authentic, and to do always what you believe is the right thing.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Cooper, and I'm a Latina role model. If you want to do what I did in my life, you want a success for your life, stay focused. Don't stop believing in yourself. Write down your goals, and I will see you at the top.
My name is Janitzi Velez, and I'm a proud Latina role model. Please embrace your uniqueness, be gracious, and everything that you do, do it with courage. You are great, and you will do great things.
I'm attorney Yara Rodriguez. I am very proud to be a Latina role model. And for you, my message is never quit. Keep at it and work 24/7 for whatever dream you have, because your dream will become a reality.